Hi there, and welcome to this video on using generative AI with approval fields. Now, this video will build upon past capabilities where you might have seen AgilePoint's generative AI ingest source documents to automatically build an application. So think about things like a process map, whether that's downloaded from the internet, designed in Visio, or exported from a legacy system, as well as an interface. Again, a screenshot from a legacy system, a PDF, Excel sheet, and so on. So this will build on that capability to automatically introduce the concept of approval fields so we can capture approvals and rejections at various stages of your automated process. So to get started, I'll move into the app builder. Now, because today's video deals with approval fields, a process-based application will apply here. And we'll give our application a name. I'm going to use the same use case from the past generative AI video where we build a product warranty claim application. And let's go ahead and drop it into a category. Now you're seeing here that I've checked collaborative development. This is great if you'd like multiple application designers to work on different aspects of this application in parallel. We'll give our process model a name. I'm going to leave the default trigger type of eForms selected here. And we'll leave number of swim lanes as 1 for now because generative AI is going to make that assessment for us. So as a next step, AgilePoint is showing me a disclaimer saying that if we use AI to build our application, at the end of this process, we will have a skeleton. A lot of the heavy lifting will have been completed on our behalf, but there are some elements left to configure. We'll talk through those as they come up. And now, how would I like to use AI to build my application? So letting AI decide essentially amounts to a prompt that describes the application that is ultimately built. But I want to build something that's hyper relevant to my organization and truly captures our context and ways of working. So for that, I can choose different types of source material to inform the process that is built. So whether that's an image or a PDF, this could be designed in Visio, exported from a legacy system, downloaded from the internet, things of that nature. And we'll see AgilePoint immediately transpose that into the AgilePoint context. To upload this, I can either browse through my PC or through connected repositories. And while AgilePoint is thinking, what you're going to see here is that AgilePoint's generative AI will connect to a computer vision model to understand all of the elements of this process map. Starting with the basics, things like the number of swim lanes. In this case here, we have 3. Human versus system activities, and even process logic. Okay, so moving back into AgilePoint, what I have here is a list of suggested process steps, which I can always revise and make changes to as appropriate. Okay, so what you'll find here is that any standard task, in other words, anything after our start task, has the potential to apply approval fields. So going in to submit, you're seeing here, I have a configuration option where I can bring in things like the time to complete property or the participants for this step in the process. Further down, I have the check warranty activity where AgilePoint has suggested a type of placeholder. Now going back into my process map, this looks to be an API call. So this is an opportunity for an enhancement. So here you're seeing I have all of the common activities available in the designer stencil, all human task types, and all of the 120 plus connectors. So I can always plug in an abstracted connector, or in my case, scroll down towards the bottom and grab an API call. Okay, so further down here, we have our first standard task, which means we can apply an approval field and comments if we'd like. So again, in this sort of scenario, I have an additional option beyond time to complete. In the participants field, I'll also have a section for approval fields. So I'm going to go ahead and turn both of these on. In so doing, you're seeing here a display name and internal name is automatically generated. If I have multiple approval fields over the course of an application, I might want to be a little more specific, say manager, director, or VP approval as an example. And then down below for the field type, By default, I have a yes, no radio button, but I can always change that. Okay, now further down here, I have disperse claim, which again is another standard task. In this case here, perhaps I don't need the approval field and associated comments, so I can always enable that selectively as it makes sense for any standard task. Okay, so everything else is looking pretty good at this point, so we can go ahead and click next. And what we'll do here is move on to designing the interface. Now there's a couple of different ways I can use AI to build my interface for me. You're seeing here I have an option to auto-generate the interface based on external data. You might have seen videos that cover this topic where we use SharePoint lists, Salesforce objects, database tables, or even Excel sheets. So if any of those sources apply to you, please do watch the corresponding video. But for today, let's go ahead and leave Create Form by AI selected. And here you're going to see much of the same options in terms of building the process with one additional option here to use Excel. Now in my case, I want to use a PDF. And again, can either upload this from my local machine or browse through a connected repository. So while AgilePoint is thinking here, again, the generative AI is connecting to a vision model to understand all of the details of this interface. Starting with things like the structure, right, where we have one column across the top, another row down, we have a 3-column, 2-column, and then one span all the way across. So AgilePoint will preserve this layout, really simplifying the transition from prior ways of working over to AgilePoint. Beyond that, it will also capture things like required fields. You'll see here I have asterisks next to all of the required fields, and AgilePoint will also interpret the various field types that you're seeing. So as an example, state appears to be a drop-down list. Order date and expiry date, both are date fields. Type of warranty and purchase source are radio buttons, and we can see the values here for those radio buttons. So you'll see AgilePoint go out and grab those and pre-create pick lists for us automatically. And then lastly, we have what appears to be a file attachment field. Okay, so here, again, I have another opportunity to revise what's come back from generative AI, make changes where appropriate. Things like the request number, that is correctly suggested as a sequence number, so we have a unique value every time this application runs. First and last name are text boxes. Phone and email are the correct AgilePoint control, as you're seeing here, phone and email. But let's take the street address here as an example. That's been suggested as a data type of text. As we all know, AgilePoint has a text area control that gives me a little more real estate when entering that address. State is a drop-down list, and as you're seeing here, the gear icon tells me there is some configuration remaining. Now in my case, I do have a pick list that can suffice here, so I can always reuse that where it makes sense, or have fresh values generated by AI. Okay, so state looks good. Moving over to zip code, we can reclassify that to a type of postal code, again for additional validation. Okay, so type of damage. Again, that's a drop-down list, meaning we have to configure this. Again, I can always reuse something I've created previously. Okay, so that brings us to type of warranty and purchase source. So if you recall back in our form mockup here, those are radio buttons with the values shown on screen. So again, AgilePoint will automatically create those for us. Okay, so everything has been configured. Down here, we have our approval field as well as comments. So I just want to go into the configuration for our comments table and to make sure that everything is in place, which it appears to be. And as a last step, I'm going to select Show the Line Breaks, which will illustrate how fields are grouped together on this new AgilePoint interface and essentially ensure that the layout for my source document is preserved. So next, I want to set up my primary entity. AgilePoint has correctly determined that the request number is the best primary key for this table. It will be unique. And now we can move into setting up our secondary entity for our comments. So this is going to be a repeatable structure, so we need to relate this to our parent table. So here, AgilePoint has correctly suggested the comment ID as being the primary field. Now the primary ID of our parent table is going to be ID. And the child field display name is going to be record ID. Okay, so as a next step here, we can determine which steps in our process should inherit the interface we've just created and validate the differences in fields from one form versus another. So looking at our submit step here, we should not expect to see any approval field or comments. So as you're seeing here, they are unselected. Now moving into the approval field, again, we can always validate what's going to be listed on this form. You can see here that approval and comments are both now checked. And we do have an option to see the presence of the approval field and comments control. And then lastly, our final human task will be disperse claim, where again, approval and comments are unselected. Okay, so getting into the home stretch here I can add other application elements like connection strings to external systems, file repositories, style sheets, users, images, and JavaScript. I can always add this later if desired. For now, we're going to go with default application security. Again, I can set this up now or change it later on. So now AgilePoint is going to drop me into the application builder with my skeleton application in place. As I mentioned, there is some configuration remaining, things like task assignment, any rules, integrations, email notifications, things of that nature will still remain. But again, giving me a huge jumping off point as far as building a very relevant new application. Okay, so let's go ahead and validate at different stages that our forms have been set up correctly. So first, let's take a look at our submit step, which will not have any approval or comments field associated. Bring this up in preview. So here you can see things like my drop-down lists are populated, my required fields are all in place. Let's back out. Moving into our approval task where we will see the comments control and approval decision. Now, because we have validation, I did populate this with some sample data, but moving over to the second tab here, we'll see that all of our pick lists are in place. Our approval field as well as comments are now visible, so everything's looking great. And then finally, we'll move into our final human task where again, we won't see the approval field or the comments control. Okay, so again, no approval field, no comments control, which means our application is in great shape. So with that, that's going to conclude the content for this video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon.